is in a cutoff shirt. I don't even know if you even call that like a cutoff shirt. That might be like
Dude, this
a
thing's sick.
spaghetti string. Remember like the back in the day?
No, it's like a
Dude, you were
deep,
just talking
deep
about
cut
the
tank.
yeah, you were just talking about the WNBA, which I have not thought about the WNBA in a while, and I really loved your take on it. But before we get there, we're obviously talking about the 6 minute mile and Gabe. Sorry guys, I gotta stop this. Let me.
Too
Or,
fired up.
I gotta get. I'm, you
It's
got me
okay.
all.
Let's go.
You got me
Let's talk
all. You got me all wrapped up. 6 minute mile and
Jay,
food,
we're,
guys.
we're live.
We're live. We can't
Oh,
start
we're
over.
live.
There's no
We're
starting
live.
over. What are you talking about?
Jay's like, let me
Start
just
over.
restart it really quick. We're literally live, Jay.
Well, I guess on that note, what do we talk about with the 6 minute mile? And then of course you guys are gonna go off on food dyes for a while, and then I definitely want to hear about
food dyes.
lowering
Food
the
dyes like
glute.
wasn't really the point of the post. I thought it was well. So this clip has been making the round. We had Alex Blennis on the podcast. We've had Jordan Syatt on the podcast, and essentially the clip, we can play it or we can not. But he just essentially was saying that if you're a 20-year-old guy and you're like having a conversation about like food dyes and how you're like worried about that in your food, but you can't run a 6 minute mile, you should shut the fuck up. And obviously, you know, it's a little bit of a rage beige post, and it's been making the rounds. A lot of people saying that like a 6 minute mile, which, you know, reminded me because you tested the 6 minute mile, granted you're not in your 20s, is like this super fast, like very unrealistic, you know, like fitness standard for people. But the point that he was making, which I agree with, and I'm curious your guys' take, is that we've become, like generally speaking, especially now with like these food ingredient things, like very much like if there's even a shred of evidence that some of this stuff might not be great for you based on like, you know, like rodent studies and whatever with like super high amounts, it's like, got to get rid of them, avoid them at all costs. There's a lot of, I think, fear mongering around this stuff where like, if it works for you to avoid that stuff, absolutely take that out. And like, there's no reason you should go out there and like seek these things. Like that is silly beyond belief. And I don't think anyone's serious is saying that, but I do think that there's a lot of people out there, a lot of these like influencers that are like, you know, like in the grocery store aisles, like telling you how like all these foods are going to kill you and your kids. That is a little bit inconsistent with then if you make the argument on the flip side, which is like, there's a lot of very, very concrete evidence that if your aerobic fitness improves to certain levels, you can be significantly healthier. Like the beneficial aspects of getting fitter far outweigh the potential risks of including these things in your diet. But if you talk about one, it's like, well, that standard's really tough. Like that doesn't make sense. Like who's going to be running a 6 minute mile? And like, if you know Alec Blennis, if anyone knows Alec Blennis, like he brings the receipts and he has, you know, a lot to back up the post. But I think that large scale, kind of like what I agreed with, and I was curious your guys' take, is I think that in general, we overestimate how much certain of these nutrition decisions play against you for overall health and seem to underestimate how much improving your fitness, particularly muscle mass and your cardiovascular fitness, actually can benefit you in terms of health, longevity, and all that good stuff. And I think that that was overall the post. And then I'm also curious your hot take, like is a 20-year-old able-bodied male, like is a 6 minute mile completely outside the realm of what everyone should be hitting? Or I don't know. What do you guys think?
It's fast. It's fast, for sure. But it's fast. I do think that we do get wrapped up, and I think that actually from like a mental perspective, it's hard with like the food dyes and all that kind of stuff. It could consume your life. I mean, it's probably consumed. I think years ago it consumed yours, didn't it, Gabe? Where like you were like constantly thinking about all those different things, and I wonder if like almost from like a mindset perspective, we get so wrapped up in those that we forget like you can't see the forest for the trees. Like you're so wrapped up in this food and the dyes, which are factors, that you're forgetting about these like big main things that can really have a positive impact on your life. But it's like all consuming, right? Because you're also consuming content that's telling you these things are going to kill you. So you're focused on no oat milk, right? When maybe you should be lifting a barbell. You know what I'm saying? But like it just starts to consume you all day long because you're thinking about what you're putting in your. You get what I'm saying? Like it just from a mindset perspective, I think if people shifted towards, hey, I want to improve my strength and conditioning, get in a hard training session, and then kind of like eat well. I think from a being happy perspective, that's probably gonna be a lot better.
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
like
the post is about majoring in the minors, I think, right? Like,
100%.
if if you're really out of shape and you have, I mean, obviously focusing on the quality and the quantity of your nutrition is important. There's no getting around that. Nutrition is an important factor to health and longevity, for sure. But if you're worried about micronutrients, or you're worried about the smallest content of seed oil, or you're worried about the smallest amount of dyes in your food, but then the other practices in your life are taking you further away from health and longevity, then if you're interested in moving closer to health and longevity, you should look in the mirror and say, hey, I've got some stuff I have to address here, whether or not that's training harder, or whether or not that's cleaning up your nutrition, or whether or not that's eating more kind of realistic amounts of food. But I also think like there is some hate in some of these like rage posts that go up. Like, you know, if somebody is focusing on improving the quality of their nutrition, but then can't run a 6-minute mile, and you're saying, oh, you should shut the fuck up if you can't run a 6-minute mile. Running a 6-minute mile is pretty tough. And like, I don't know who this dude, Alex Blennis, is. I wasn't on the podcast when you guys had him on, but like, I also think that kind of language is kind of weird. It's just weird. It's just clickbaity and weird. There's no reason to say, shut the fuck up if you can't run a 6-minute mile and you're worried about food dyes. There's just no reason aside from the fact of being controversial on Instagram. So I also think
drawing
that's
attention for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Well,
of
here we are.
course.
We're talking about it right now, actually.
Yeah, it's okay. I just don't like this idea. Like I've been in that position before too. Like I've been the guy before that like I think what you're doing is like so terrible, and what I'm doing is the greatest thing ever. I don't think that that's the correct way to look at this stuff. I think that a lot of people can get results a lot of different ways, and if it works for you, it works for you. I think the ultimate goal is the fact that like health and longevity are a major issue in the United States. And if we can get more of the population moving in a better direction, I think we as a country are going to save ourselves from a pretty ruinous fate. And I understand that these guys probably have the best intentions in mind when they're saying this stuff, but let's also be real. Running a 6-minute mile is tough for an athlete. That's tough for somebody who's an athletic person. And I think that standard is probably unrealistic for most people in their 20s. And if you're looking at something like that and you go, well, I'm never going to do that, does that turn more people away from getting into health, longevity, and fitness? Just something to think about.
How attainable should a standard be for it to be beneficial? And then what do you guys think? I think our audience isn't in their 20s, but what do you guys think is like the minimum standard that the 30-year-old man should be aiming for to run a mile in?
Why do we have to have a mile standard? What's the deal with the mile standard? Is it just a benchmark, or are we just talking like?
Yeah,
I think it's a
grade school.
I think it's a very encapsulating benchmark of a lot of things that move your health and fitness in the right direction, right? Like if you're running a 7:30 mile, 8-minute mile, like I think you have a certain level of cardiovascular fitness that is pretty impressive. I think that, you know, running specifically is like one of the most like natural movements that us as humans should like be able to do. Obviously it doesn't encapsulate stuff like strength that's super important, but I do think that there's something to be said about like, I don't know, what should the, you know, provider male be able to run a mile in? Is that 8 minutes? Is that 8:30?
I think it's 8 minutes.
Is that 9 minutes?
I think a fast mile for anybody in that age range would be sub 7. I think that'd be good. Like if you're running a 6:45 mile, 6:50 mile, I don't think you have anything to worry about. For real. 6:30 mile is impressive. A 6-minute mile is very impressive. A sub 6-minute mile is super, super, super tough. You have to be running really hard.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between a sub 6-minute mile and a 6:30. Like when I went to the track and I was getting ready for my you know, I think what did I do? I think I did a 5:58, right, Gabe, or something like that.
Yeah, you were like right under.
I ran a 400 in you know, because they're 1:30 400s, right? That's the clip you need to run. I ran a 2-minute 400, super easy, low key. Then you run a 1:30. It's like, dude, you gotta really try for a 1:30, and then to hold that for 6 minutes is very, very difficult. So I think the whole 6 minute thing is probably too fast for most people. Obviously, there's a ton of athletes out there that could do it. I know Gabe could probably hold 6 minutes for what? You could probably hold sixes for how many miles? 10?
I don't know right now, but yeah, I mean, but I'm a runner, right? So
Yeah.
it's very different.
Jason,
I
you got to bring
remember
your audio up a little bit, bro. You're a little low there in the on the
low power
microphone.
mode.
Low power mode on the microphone.
I'm
You gotta
bringing
bring
up
it
my. I'm gonna bring it up. Yeah.
Because I remember, when, like, for example, when you did the Tim Kennedy video, like a mile run was part of, like, those standards or benchmarks that, everyone should be able to hit. I guess, and on a separate note, what do you think is the most, like, when you talk about being capable and being able to, like, protect and whatever that looks like, what do you think is the ideal distance run to train for? Is that like a 400 meter? Is that a
400
200
meters.
meter?
I think 400.
Like, what is the distance that you're trying to be like? If you were to excel at any distance, what do you think is getting you out of, a shitty situation most effectively?
You could say sprinting. Yeah, I mean, I would just say that most people don't sprint enough, right? Like I was doing sprints yesterday or 2 days ago on a hillside, right? Or on the treadmill. I think most people don't get enough of sprinting in. At the men's club, once a week, we finish with 2 to 3 sprints just to kind of build, just to keep it like, because a lot of guys do, they haven't sprinted in 10, 20 years. And if you had to sprint to go, grab your kid, that famous video of the stroller and the guy sprints and grabs the kid before the stroller goes into the street. If you haven't used it, you're going to lose it. So I think sprinting is probably the number one thing, like 100 meters, 50 meters.
Ooh, I would go a little longer than that. I think
400.
I think being able to run an 800. I think being able to go for 800 meters at pretty close to your max pace. First of all, it's the most miserable distance because the 400, we're talking sub 2 minutes, right? If you're really cooking, somewhere sub 2 minutes, like 130 would be really, really fast running a 400. But then to hold that pace for another 130 in a row, man, that's really, really hard to do. And I don't think a lot of people can do that. So if I was talking about getting away from somebody who had a moderate level of fitness, I would say I have to be able to hold like 3 minutes of my max effort run. And if somebody's catching me after 3 minutes of me going my fastest, they've earned it. They most dangerous game, they've earned
Then it goes to the ground.
Wait, almost like 3 minutes of burpees, MDV? So almost like interesting time domain, you're saying.
Full circle podcast moment.
Bro, but now you're just slamming yourself on the floor. But I do think the most important thing in this whole conversation is, and this is something that, like, as my injuries are recovering, I'm noticing about my own training, is just having the confidence to know that whatever is coming to me outside of my door, whether, something is, I got to pick up a package that lands on my doorstep, or I'm going to go ride my bike, or like I'm walking down the street here in Oceanside and there's like a shady person who's coming at me, like, having the physical confidence and the awareness that if something goes the way that I don't think it's going to go, can I explode and break away? Do I have the physical strength to push this person, to get away from this person, to break their grip on me, to whatever? And then do I have the physical capability to outmaneuver or outrun whatever is coming my way? And I think that confidence comes through training. It comes through training, it comes through physical performance, it comes through looking in the mirror and you go, wow, I feel strong, I feel capable, I feel ready to be prepared. And it also comes through things like jiu-jitsu. And I cannot explain how much I miss the feeling of knowing that if someone who didn't have a lot of training put their hands on me in really any sort of way, that there would be no problems. Really, someone with no training, there's not a lot of problems that if you're a couple of years into jiu-jitsu, that you can't handle at least immediately breaking their grip or putting them into a position where they're incapacitated. Whole different story that if somebody like Jason, who is 220 pounds and's got 7 or 8 years of jiu-jitsu training, they put their hands on you, you're in a whole different ballgame. You just have to be aware of like where you're at in that spectrum.
Do you guys think it's safe to assume that anyone that would have some sort of malicious intent isn't someone that's training?
No, I don't think it's safe to assume that. I think that there's bad people all over. I think that Dude, I've been thinking about this a lot. I had a really interesting
at,
conversation with Jason when we were in Chicago.
So I'm coming at that from just this assumption that like people that are going out there and pursuing something like BJJ are people that aren't trying to use that for malicious reasons. But is that like completely?
I would say more times than not.
Naive. But I think it would be a naive assumption to say that anybody who goes and trains jujitsu.
I mean, I wouldn't say anybody, but I would say. Again, I just, that would reinforce the fact that like, you don't need to be a black belt to feel confident that you can deal with most shitty situations, because if you've trained a little bit, chances are that someone that is looking for trouble is not someone that's like, you know, hitting the BJJ mats 3 times a week.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think you have to be really careful. So just imagine like, so Jason's got a daughter, Gabe, you have a young daughter, right? If a dude came over to take your daughter out at whatever age you guys deem appropriate to take your daughter out, and he was like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm a purple belt. Like, I'm not going to do anything to your daughter. But you get that icky feeling about this person. You'd be like, nah, bro. Like, you're not going out with my daughter. I don't care how much you train. If you're a piece of shit, you're still a piece of shit. So, like, I think that having that awareness about your own sense of, like, what your gut feeling is, how this person is acting, what do they do when you're watching them, all those kinds of things are really important. I do think that jiu-jitsu in a lot of ways takes people on a journey of discipline, for sure. And the people who have been in it the longest, who you realize have this sense of calm about them, who don't utilize violence as their first reaction to things, those people are usually the most dangerous people in the room. They're usually the people who you go, if shit starts to go down, that guy over there is probably going to handle shit. And I've seen more people in the jiu-jitsu community who are purple, brown, black belts who act like that than outside of the jiu-jitsu community, for sure.
Yeah, Gabe, I think what you alluded to is accurate, I believe. But I think what MDV brought up is a really interesting topic, right? Because someone could be a brown belt, but if they give you like this weird vibe, of course. But in general, because of the discipline required, because of the consistency, because of the hard work, it breeds people. Same with CrossFit. Same with like a lot of fitness modalities. In general, you meet really good people. I just did the men's club here in Vegas, and we met 30 really good guys with there was a bunch of law enforcement, a bunch of gym owners, a bunch of different people, and it's because they're trying to better themselves. They're trying to do hard things. They're trying to expose themselves. So I would say more times than not, it's kind of like self-selecting, if that makes sense. In jiu-jitsu in particular, I think it's self-selecting because it requires so much humbleness, and it's a very difficult thing to do. Like that's why I think I agree with you what you're saying.
Trust but verify.
Yeah, there you
Always.
go.
Trust but verify.
Dude,
sure.
The protecting kind of conversation just reminded me of something random I want to share here because I really appreciated it. I don't know how big the study was or whatever, but I thought this was a cool little anecdote. They did this study on mothers and fathers sleeping with new kids. And, like you kind of hear this often, and Ariel's definitely noticed this, but moms start sleeping a lot lighter when you have young kids. Like the slightest kind of sound of them like starting to cry or whatever, they're up like this. Yeah. And dads sleep in through that stuff, generally speaking. Again, there'll be some dads that don't, but generally speaking, and this is like evolutionarily like just been something that's built in to like moms after they have their kids, they like become lighter sleepers because they have this nurturing side. However, in the study, what they found was that if the leaves rustle outside or if there's some sound outside, the dads wake up and the moms sleep in. Like the moms are less likely to be aware that there's something outside, something off, but the dad will be up and he'll be up pretty quick. And I just thought that was really cool.
Dude,
that
send me a link to that. That's really interesting. Was it just
I'll find it. But
there's a lot of that kind of stuff in this book. So I've been reading this book, Why We Love, and it's a really interesting take on romantic love. And the premise of the book is that there's a nature and chemistry to romantic love that a lot of it is built out of, at least Helen Fisher, the author, makes the argument that it's built out of like the evolutionary need to continue to thrive and survive and attract the most high quality mate that you can. It's very, very interesting. But those things make sense to me. Like if there was a perceived dangerous threat or the noise was so stark or so sudden outside that it was a dangerous threat, it makes a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective that the man, the protector, in most cases would awake first. And then the crying, the need for nurturing or food or comfort or whatever, it makes a lot of sense that the mother, of course, on an evolutionary timeline, was the person to go do that.
Yeah,
Have you guys ever heard of the? Have you ever heard of the Golden Nugget?
The casino?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of the casino, the Golden Nugget, for sure.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this place is shady, dude. So,
Golden
we,
Nugget.
so we wanted to take the kids downtown Vegas just to. There was like a zip lining thing that I thought the kids would like to do. Ava ended up doing it. So we go to downtown Vegas, dude. And I've never been to downtown Vegas in my life. Have you guys been to downtown Vegas? Any of you guys? Either of you guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Dude, bro, the Golden Nugget was like the epicenter of just a lot going on, right? A lot of different characters going on. And it's not like your typical strip. It was very different. So you're walking around with the kids and dude, there's this guy blatantly obviously using his iPhone with a one of those sticks on it that like allows it to like what do you call those
His gimbal?
a gimbal.
Like a
So he's
small
sitting
gimbal?
there, dude. So he's sitting there with the gimbal, and he's on this side of a window, and there's a girl, there's a lifeguard, and he's just sitting there filming her, blatantly obvious, just filming this lifeguard for like at least many minutes, just creepy, just watch. And so I walk up to him,
Oh, Jason, nice.
and I couldn't,
You couldn't resist. You had to. I like it.
I couldn't resist. Look, she was an adult. She was like, I don't think there was anything like illegal about what was happening, but it was just super cringe and creepy, right? And so I walk up to him, and Ashley, probably, she didn't really want me to get involved at all, but I just was like, hey man, like, how's the view or something like that? And he just looks at me, he's like, it's wonderful. And he just keeps filming. At that moment, I just said to myself, like,
Thanks, bro.
like, what am I supposed to do here? I just let it go. But it was just the fact that, like, in front of the kids, like, you saw, like, this dude who's just, like, uber creepy, filming this woman in a bathing suit for, like, 10 minutes. And, I didn't exchange much more than that. I figured just kind of making him feel uncomfortable would, like, have him stop, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like,
I thought he would like just like turn it off and kind of
no.
get on with
So that's
his
what I
day.
thought. Well, so that's what I thought too. I thought by me saying like, "Hey man, how's the view?" Like, kind of like alluding to like, "Hey bro, like, what are you doing?" But he's like, "It's wonderful," and I was just like, "Oh god." It was just creepy, man. And it was good for the kids to see because it allowed them to realize like, dude, there are people out there, and this is a real life example. We're not just talking about. We're showing you an example of it. But it was really not cool,
Yeah. Dude, that kind of stuff is everywhere, man. I hate to be so like fatalistic about this kind of stuff, or like I'm not trying to be a fear monger, but like I think you just have to know that there are people out there who don't have your and your family or your loved ones' best interests at all. At all. I think that there's people out there who are voyeurs, who are looking at kids, who are looking to take advantage of people. And I think it's just the reality of the situation. Yes, there are many good people. And I think the good people outweigh the bad people across the board. I really do. I think that most human beings, for the most part, are good people who will help you out, who aren't going to take advantage of you. But there is a portion of the population, and I think this is just reality, that is out there looking to take advantage of people. And one of the things that I just think that this is so crazy, man. Like, I think posting, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here, but posting pictures of your kids in their bathing suits, like on Instagram, is one of like the wildest things that I've ever seen happen in like modern society. I think it's so strange that this stuff goes out there, essentially like putting little kids in like baby bikinis on Instagram. And again, I'm not trying to fear monger, but it's one of those things where it's just like, if you realize how many people are probably predatory even on Instagram in that way, like why would you do that? What is the point of posting those things in a way that like you put your naked kid on the Instagram? It's just like that kind of thing for me is like, I just don't understand it. As a kid growing up in like, whether going like pool locker rooms or stuff like that, or gym locker rooms, or being like even like 16, 17, 18 in gym locker rooms at times, like there are times that I felt fucking weird in those environments. And I don't fully understand like why, and maybe you guys can enlighten me, why parents would willingly put pictures of young children in either no clothes or bathing suits and stuff like that out on the internet. That for me is like one of those things. It's such a head scratcher. It's such a head scratcher. I don't know if you guys have different takes on that, but like that's one of those things I just look at and I just go, I just don't understand. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because I feel like it's one of those things where, especially once you have kids, you just don't want to fucking think about it. And that is a slippery slope of then being naive to the fact that it exists, right? Like, it's such an uncomfortable thought.
Yeah,
Like,
it really is
incredibly uncomfortable, and it's impossible to explain how much more uncomfortable it is once there's like an actual like this would be my daughter, this would be my son, that you just like you pretend it doesn't exist, and like you don't you just don't fucking think about it, you know. And I can see how that becomes a slippery slope to putting stuff out there that it's just the best of intentions, it's cute, it's whatever, it's this, the only people that are going to see it are like our friends and our family and whatever. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100% on just the unfortunate truth that it's very naive to think that that's the case, regardless of, you know, your social media being private, regardless of you thinking that like, you know, everyone that follows you, like all that is very naive to think. I think that it just becomes a place of like, fuck, man, like how much time and attention do you like give that, and then does it become a slippery slope of then, you know,
then you become neurotic over it,
shielding
and
your
then
kids in every respect. But I mean, it is tough, man. It is tough. Like we've gone through like evolutions of, we used to share our kids a lot on social media. Then there was a point where like Ariel and I decided like we're not sharing them at all, like not even their faces. And then even covered. But then even now, like that's kind of just like over time, like we kind of like don't do that anymore. And honestly, like now that you bring it up, we haven't even had a conversation about it. Last conversation we had was we decided, hey, we're not doing this. We sent a message to like our family and we were like, hey, just please don't post picture of the kids. And it was all good. And just like with time, it's kind of like fizzled out. Yeah. And I don't have a good answer even to why, aside from the fact that like you just don't want to fucking think about it, so you don't. Well, but let me I think it's one of the many things with like parenting that's just like there's no fucking right answer.
Yeah, I listen, I don't have kids, so I'm looking at this from an outsider's perspective. For sure. Of observing, and like what I know about human beings is that there's a lot of really shitty people out there. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm perfect at all. I have made mistakes. I have treated people poorly. But there's a certain line that I think once you cross it, you go into this like void of like stuff that's like really, really, really bad and terrible. And the things about like, I'm not saying don't post your kids on social media. I'm not saying don't show your kids' face, even your kids' faces, but like, there are these things that come across my page of people who have kids who I follow or whatever, where it's just like kids playing in the pool naked, and I'm like, how do you think that is a good thing to post, regardless of whether or not you're putting it out there with the best intentions? It just is so strange to me, because it seems like a predator's paradise to just be able to go and look at this stuff and be like, hey, I'm going to save this clip, screenshot this clip, use this clip, whatever. And maybe even like, hey, if the kids are covered and they're in their rash guards and they're in their bathing suits or whatever, it's a whole different story. But then there's like this like weird, sometimes like showcase of children in like bikinis and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, I just keep moving on, because it's very strange.
It sounds like there's spectrums here, right? And it's all based on like the parents' comfort, of course. I wouldn't say that's something that we've ever like really focused on or done. I do think, though, to Gabe's point, it's like, I think the intentions are pure. It's like, hey, we're celebrating a moment together as a family or whatever it is. Like, you're in Hawaii, you're not even thinking through that lens. And so I'd encourage, like MDV, like from your perspective, it'd be like, I mean, and there's definitely exceptions and nuance to all of this, but like, I think the intention is so pure that they don't even think through that lens. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, they're just like trying to they're just trying to put out a moment in Hawaii. They're not thinking about it like the way you're thinking about it. You know what I mean? So that's how it comes across. That's all I'm saying.
I understand that, like, hey, I want to showcase, like, this is a cool moment. This is super cute. Like, all that kind of stuff is box checked, get it. But then you also have to understand that you're putting an image of a child, either naked or mostly naked, onto the internet, which is, if you just look at it from that perspective, a wild, wild thing to do. If it's your own child, would you put somebody else's child looking like that on the internet? No. So why are you putting your own child on the internet like that? And again, I'm not trying to fear monger. It's just one of those things that in this conversation, it just came up, and I don't understand the need to do that. The need to like share pictures of your children like that on Instagram. But again, I'm not a parent, so maybe I just haven't experienced that.
Yeah, man, I'd be curious. I'm sure we can get some feedback on this, like of the why. I mean, I think that most people would agree with what you're sharing. I just don't think in the moment they're even thinking about it through that lens, and so it doesn't become a thing, right? Yeah.
But the conversation that we had in Chicago, Jay, I thought that this was really insightful, where we're just talking about, like, Jay and I were having a conversation about he's raising a young woman. He's raising Ava into a young woman. And the unfortunate reality of the situation is that, like, I think women just have to be more aware, more careful, more understanding of the environments that they're putting themselves into than most men will ever have to worry about. I don't worry about getting into an elevator with one other person ever. But if I was a 16-year-old girl getting into an elevator with one man, are you fucking kidding me? A closed environment like that, I would not be okay with that. Like, that's something that I think is just the reality of some of the situations that, like, people need to be aware of. And I don't think it's like fear. I don't think that I'm trying to inspire fear. I think it's just being real, understanding that, hey, it might be better.
It's just situational awareness. It's practicality. That's all it is.
Exactly.
It's so important, man. It was funny, like literally today, and I was kind of like saying this joking around, but today I was talking to Charlie. I talk to her all the time. She doesn't understand anything I'm saying, or she does. Actually, the one thing I've learned about small kids is they understand more than you realize. But I was telling her, because, you know, and it's funny, this has come up recently on the podcast, like, we want a big family, we want to have more kids. And I was telling her today, as I was getting her dressed, I was like, man, you know what? I'm happy with whatever we get. But I think my ideal is, let's just have boys from here on in so that you could be the only girl I have to worry about, and you're going to have a horde of brothers that can, like, help me just keep you safe literally forever. And that's what I was telling her. And you know, kind of joking around, but I literally think that I believe that. I will be happy with whatever we get, obviously, but I think that if I had any preference, I think that that would be my preference now that I have a daughter, because, man, just like, I know that Shay will be fine in many ways in respect to, like, what you're talking about, right? Like, he's not going to have to worry about those things the way my daughter is going to have to worry about. And that, as a dad, is very, very troubling and scary. And I think about it a lot, especially as she's getting older now. Dude. And it, like, I can only imagine Jason, like, about to go to high school. Like, I can only imagine how I feel now being multiplied 200-fold when you're teaching your daughter how to drive for the first time. Like, I can only imagine what's going through your head, Jay, as you're, like, seeing your daughter, your, like, little girl become, like, a woman. Like, it scares me, and it makes me very uncomfortable. And I know that that's just a part of parenting, and it's part of the challenge, and it's part of the beauty of it. But I was like, man, if I could just decide here, like, let's just have a horde of boys so that we can all just, like, create a big circle around Charlie and keep her safe literally forever. But anyway.
Dude, it gets easier as they get older, right? Because you start to learn, you start to see what's going on, you start to pick up on, hey, how can I improve here? How can I help them make a better situational awareness here? But, like, with Ava now, Ash and I were really focused on this at the current moment. Like, we're really trying our best to, like, not, like, cushion things, like, let her figure all these things out. Like, if we're walking somewhere, let her figure out, like, the directions, like, just little stuff, like, just you name it, just trying to give more empowerment, more like this, so that we could smooth our way into it. Because I think what happened, and it goes by like this, is now that they're 14, right? It's like, dude, you used to do everything for them, right? Like, hey, follow me, we're going here, come here, do this. Hey, here's our room key, here's our house, this is how we get. But now as they get older, you got to say, hey, how do you lock up the house? You know, and start giving more and more responsibility, because eventually they're going to need it. And you can't just, like, flip a switch. It needs to be, like, you know, slowly developed in them. And same thing with driving. I mean, dude, with the driving thing, you know, so she's 14, and we were on a road that I felt like was really safe and secure. And we started introducing driving for the first time, and that was a really cool thing because we need to earn our confidence with that, right? It needs to start off like low key. We go for like a couple of miles. We're in the middle of nowhere, and then we start building up, building up, building up. Because what I don't want is to get the permit, and then all of a sudden I think we're gonna go from like 0 to 100 real quick, you know? Like,
Go down
and
17
so all these
for Santa Cruz.
exactly. So like all of these things, I feel like they just take time to kind of develop and grow into, right? And so like right now you're like with Charlie, you're like, wow, I can't imagine. Well, you will be able to get there because millions and millions of other people have done it. It just takes time to develop like that comfort. You know what I mean? And then it's always there in the back of your mind, of course.
The absolute importance of getting kids into martial arts I was lost on me for so long. I mean, even as a young kid who grew up in the late 80s, 90s, karate was kind of big. Like that was like the big martial art. Like it was the tail end of the Karate Kid era. And the Karate Kid era really did usher in like this huge boom in karate skills. But like we as kids would like, I don't want to say make fun of the kids who did like Tiger Schulman's karate, but like we were definitely like playing baseball and sports and like being out there and doing the team things. And the kids that went and did martial arts, it was kind of like they were the outsiders. They were the kids who were doing like the weird thing over here. But looking at it now with a greater perspective and a greater lens, like the absolute critical importance, I would even say potentially more so for young women to be involved in judo or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I would say would be the two most important things, right? To have those skills honed by the time you get to age 14, 15, 16, 17 would be, it's almost impossible to put the amount of importance on it because the amount of comfort that you could at least have that, you know, she could break somebody's wrist if if she's getting touched the wrong way, or she like could get away really quickly or throw somebody or whatever. Just being less of a target and more of a threat, I think, is really, really important. If kids are part of my journey, that's going to certainly be part of the journey that I'll put my kids through for sure.
One of the biggest lessons, man. One of the biggest lessons they can take is exactly that. It's a no-brainer. Put them in martial arts. Another video
I would say that just on that note, though,
Yeah.
it's easier said than done, right? So, like,
Oh, for sure.
I think that, you know, I'm the biggest advocate ever, but that's had to come with a lot of balance. And what you want sometimes isn't always what they want to be able to do. And so you got to kind of work and navigate that, right? Because it's such an important skill set, but if they don't find a passion or desire for it, how do you keep brewing it is something that I've been, you know, I've had to work on, right? And picking your battles is so important. And so it's like, hey, this is a skill set that you need to have, kind of like brushing your teeth. Well, okay, well, how much do we introduce it, and how often, and how much are we gonna like force that rock in, or whatever you call it, without causing resentment or whatnot? And so that's a fine line there too.
I hear you.
Although I agree 100% on all of it, I think maybe if I can go back in time, maybe getting into something. I mean, we tried it. I was gonna say start earlier, but I think we tried it. It just was. It's more of something that I've done with the kids than they've gone and had like actual classes in. You know.
When
I
you
mean,
say
I can only say this from the perspective of, again, the one that I have, but if I were looking at things that would be non-negotiables if I had a daughter, an absolute non-negotiable would be training some sort of martial art from some sort of young age, and to the point where there's comfort with the application of hands to that person, and understanding that, like, you know, you don't, the panic that can set in even as a man the first few times that you go to jiu-jitsu is very interesting. Super, super interesting. When somebody puts their hands on you in a way that they're not fucking around anymore. Because when you roll and you practice and you're kind of going through drills and stuff like that, a lot of people are putting their hands on you, but they're putting their hands on you in a way where you can go, oh, hey, like, all right, let's stop. Let's talk about this. Let's feel this out a little bit. Like, oh, let me get out of this. But then when you live roll and somebody's not letting you get out of something and you don't know what to do, there's a level of panic that is uncomfortable, even for a man. And it's really important because I think in a real life situation, the stakes are just so much higher. Stakes are so much higher when somebody puts their hands on you outside of a jiu-jitsu gym. And that's the thing that I'm looking forward to as my ankle is getting stronger and stronger, is just getting back to doing that with people who are my size, who are larger than me, who are smaller than me, all of it. I want to feel all of it. I want a 200-pound man like Jason sweating on me, putting his weight on me. You heard it here first. I want to be underneath a gorilla like Jason. No, I'm just kidding.
That's the clip.
For real, dude. I think that's important. It's important to understand what a 200-pound strong person feels like when they don't want to let go of you. It's fucking scary. And that's one of the most major benefits of jiu-jitsu, I think, or that type of training.
Jay, when you say, we tried starting early, how early are you talking?
3, 4, right? Pretty early. I think that, we did gymnastics. We did a lot of different things. We've tried everything. I think, like I said, I think as a prerequisite and as like a key important thing, it's like, hell yeah. But it's kind of like one of those things where it's like you said, easier said than done, and everything comes with like, in a vacuum, right? Like you would say, yeah, dude, of course, like that's a non-negotiable. But when you practically try and apply it over periods of time, right? It's like, how do you keep that fire burning, right? And you gotta navigate it as a parent, because you think it's so important, but if they don't think it's important, how do you kind of find that balance? It's hard.
Yeah.
That's at least the situation I've had. And there's been other situations where, of course, people find a lot of passion in it, but my kids in particular, they haven't. And I've had to be like, okay, but then we still need to develop these skills. So it's just been that in itself is, it's a funny, Ash and I, we talk about this, like with your kids going to a school, right? It's like, oh, the parents say, oh, my kids are gonna go to this school. It's like, okay, well, when that time comes, right, your kids are probably gonna make the decision, right? They need to make that decision. You should support that decision. But like, it's, as a parent, you want to do all these different things, but then you realize like, hey, sometimes you just gotta let them, and it's like, it's their decision. Back to the book that we're reading.
Oh, yeah, Let Them is the book. When I was growing up, one of the only things my parents forced me to do. So I had like chores and stuff like that, and like I was kind of like the indentured servant growing up, because I was the only boy of older sister, younger sister. So I was like the voluntold helper out around the house for chores and stuff like that. And I really appreciate it now in the age that I'm at right now. But at the time, I was like, I didn't like it. But one of the only things they forced me to do was they forced me to become an ocean lifeguard. They forced me to go take the swim test to become an ocean lifeguard. I didn't want to do it. I was just being lazy. I was being lazy. I loved the ocean. I loved playing in the ocean. I loved body surfing. I loved all of it. And my mom was like, you are doing this. I don't care if you say no. I don't care if you don't want to go. You're getting your bathing suit. You're getting in the car with me. We're going to go to Echo Park. You're going to swim and practice your times, and you're going to go out there and you're going to be an ocean lifeguard. And I was like, I guess I don't have a fucking choice. But it was one of the most important things for me. Not only did it help me understand the importance of a job that has some gravity to it at a young age. There's a lot of fun that happens with that job, but there's also a lot of responsibility. But also just the skill of being able to swim and swim long distances and swim fast and know that you're not going to drown if you get into a pool, and you know how to tread water and all that kind of stuff. And I just think it was, as much as I didn't want to do, if they let me off the hook of that, I would have not had some of the experiences that I've got to have and some of the skills that I have. So that was an important learning lesson for me, that my mom just put her foot down. She's like, nope, you're doing it. It's like, okay, I guess so.
I see Jason's eyes darting over to the comment section. I know he's reading the comment section. Can't help himself. I see him over there. So I'll let you answer that question in a bit. But on that note, MDV, I 100% agree, man. And I think that and Jay, I'm not by any means saying that this is what you're doing. I think you found a really good balance. But I do think that this whole gentle parenting culture now of even from young ages validating all the feelings, and they get to choose everything, and you have to oh, I understand that you're upset right now, and narrate everything is honestly drives me freaking nuts. And I do think that there's some value to a little bit of what we grew up under, which was while you live under this roof, there are some things that are going to get done, and they're going to get done. And that's how I was raised. And in many ways, while that was happening, I hated it, and I was upset, and I didn't want to do it, and it sucked. But now looking back on it, I don't think there's anything that I can think back on that was man, my parents really forced me into that thing that I didn't take something super positive from. You know, like it was always a running joke growing up. Like, dude, Latino parents are no joke, man. Like it is straight A's and you're doing a sport and you're doing this. And like, I don't care what you think. And I don't know. I think I really benefited from that type of upbringing. And I try and bring some level of that now that I have kids. Obviously you learn and you adapt, and it's not, you know, maybe as hard as it was, but I think I had a pretty hard, very strict parents. And I really, really appreciated it now that I'm older. And I think I took so much positive out. And I do think that the pendulum swung a little bit too much in the other direction of now everything being, what do they want to do? What, you know, like, you know, I get picking your battles, but I think it gets to the point where it's like, you know, they just kind of choose their own adventure the whole time. And I just think that, and I've seen it now with little kids, like kids thrive with structure. They just thrive with structure and rules, and this is what's done, and correction when necessary. And I do think that that's, to me, seems to be the better way to go. And again, with all things parenting, like everyone will have their own opinions, and if it works for you, it works for you. But man, like the whole gentle parenting stuff just drives me nuts. But I mean, I guess if it works for you, it works for you. But Jay, you want to answer the
Is it a what kind of question is? Because I have a.
It has nothing to do with gentle parenting. Yeah, go
so
ahead.
Really
yeah.
quickly, there's a clip that I saw on Instagram, and I don't remember the exact details of the situation, but it was like a group of, I think like 14 or 15 or 16-year-old kids. Like they were not 18, they were not 19, they were not 20, old enough to know better, but young enough to still be minors. And they were at like a restaurant like fucking Red Robin or Chili's or some shit like this. Like one of those restaurants where it's like a family kind of atmosphere and you get bread at the table. And there was an old man, an older gentleman sitting with his wife. And what happened was one of the kids started acting up for attention probably or whatever, being a dick, started throwing bread at the old couple, at the old lady. They started like doing that kind of, first of all, this stuff drives me insane. If I ever see stuff like that in public, it drives me insane. The fact that people are so disrespectful. But what happened was the old guy got up and smacked the shit out of the kid. Like he literally stood up, went over to the table and just boom, slaps the kid across the face. And I couldn't have been happier watching that kind of clip. I know this is like, I know it's a weird kind of thing out here where it's like, you know, did he really deserve that? But they were terrorizing this couple. This couple didn't do anything to them. And, you know, when you do something like that, like technically that's also assault. If you're throwing things at people, you're using something to hit somebody with, like you're also now opening the door for self-defense in a certain way. But I just, that kind of stuff, man, like, I think that it happens more these days. I think that like.
Did they say what happened to the guy? Was there any more context?
I don't know. I was just watching the clip a few times, and then,
Dude, I bet you that guy did that other kid. I bet you he did him a huge favor.
Maybe the old guy got in trouble or whatever. But I
bet you he did that kid.
If I was the old guy, I would have probably reacted the same exact way. I think I probably would have done the same thing.
No, I bet you he did that kid a favor. I bet you 10 years from now that kid will look back and be like, dude, that guy, he set me straight. He checked my whatever, and I needed that. I needed that at that moment. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
Anyway, that was an interesting clip that I saw, and I know people probably have different opinions on it, you know, have self-restraint or whatever, but dude, if you're in your 70s or your 80s and somebody's throwing bread at your wife and it's a young kid and you're trying to just enjoy a meal, I think you have carte blanche at that point to go old man strength on them and just show them what's up, man. If you're 80, who cares? What are you going to do? Throw them in jail? Probably. Anyway, what are the questions that we got?
Well, the one was about jiu-jitsu. In particular, like if you live in an area where there's not much jiu-jitsu around, well, first thing is, can you start jiu-jitsu at a late age? Yeah, I've seen many people start in their 40s and 50s, maybe even a few in their 60s, but mostly in their 40s and 50s. And I think you're going to find an even bigger swell to jiu-jitsu coming from all these people that were fired up on CrossFit for many years. I think you're going to see jiu-jitsu with the movie that's coming out with Jocko and Chris Pratt, and also along with people coming out like looking for other ways to enhance their like overall fitness. I think you're going to see jiu-jitsu hit a huge stride regardless of the age. But in regards to Dude, if you're in an environment where you don't have many gyms around, it is a little bit tough because you need to have training partners. But you could start with things like BJJ Fanatics, which is like an online community of like tutorials. And you can start just kind of learning the art, just kind of understanding what it is, learning. You could also order in a jiu-jitsu dummy, which I actually had one back in the day. It's like a figure, and you can kind of practice some side control and different stuff on it. It's not great, but it's fine. But those are like two things you can do immediately. Tutorials, get a dummy, and then the third thing I would do is identify someone in your local area who also wants to learn, and then go look at a tutorial and then practice it with each other. Super low key, super low key. Start with the fundamentals, work something, and then really take your time before you ever even think about sparring. And that's what I would encourage you to do. Like learn with someone else, and then maybe if you want to go spar, maybe go to a gym, because it really helps when there's someone there who kind of manages the spar, because you don't want things to get out of hand, especially if someone's your friend or neighbor. So
this is, I think, where
pitch.
stuff even like Tony Blauer and the spear system. Like if you're somebody who's just interested in really basic self-defense for people who are just walking around, human beings who are just walking around. Tony Blauer, obviously the GOAT with the spear system. He's all about like the reaction positions and like how you act from this very docile looking stance, but it can be a very dangerous position as well. And I think grip breaking is really important. So if you wanted to start off, if you didn't know anything, right? If somebody grabs your wrist or grabs you some way, how do you get out of that? Which way do you roll your wrist? Do you limp arm? If somebody grabs your clothes, how do you break the grip if they're gripping like this on your shirt? Those kinds of things, I think you can look up any YouTube videos and then just practice them, like Jason said, really gently, really gently with somebody, and then you kind of work up the percentage of resistance.
But dude, I love that question, because I'm telling you, if you've been debating about doing it, it's going to be a game changer. So definitely dive into it. Hey, did you guys see? Did you see? You were talking about the NBA, the women's NBA, a minute ago to start off this conversation. Did you see that video of what's the name of like the really phenomenal WNBA star? Caitlyn Clark, who got like eye poked and then like I got like shoved to the ground. Dude, it's getting pretty like.
It's getting
anyways,
chippy.
It's getting a little chippy, right? It's getting a little. I don't know if that's good for the sport or bad for the sport, but it's causing attention. It's great for the sport, huh? Just causing attention to it.
It's probably hard on the athletes in some way, though. It's probably hard on. Yeah, she gets fouled pretty hard.
It's contact in the face as well. It'd be interesting to know if they're going to look at that first one for a flagrant foul. There was an impact. There wasn't wind up through, but there was a direct hit to the eye of Clark, and then just a totally unnecessary.
Yeah, so I saw an article just asking like why don't her teammates like step up for her in those situations, and what's happening, and they do
now.
Yeah.
It's very different now. In that same game, Sophie Cunningham, I think is her name. She fouled the player that poked her eye. She fouled her super hard at the end of the game once it was like garbage time, because they were already winning. So that's changed big time. But yeah, I mean, it's drawing eyes to the sport, man. I mean, I've probably been more interested in the WNBA than ever. Just the clips are cool. I think following Caitlyn Clark is really cool. She's just like a class act through and through. Like, it's been interesting how she's dealt with all this adversity, because she always just brings it back to like, that was a good basketball play. Like, I'm here to play basketball. And then she goes out and like backs it up, which is also super cool. So it's been fun to watch for sure.
She's got very Jordan Kobe vibes in terms of how she handles herself. Like she's a
just stoic and about the game.
Yeah, very professional player. I was very impressed also with on the male side of the equation, Jalen Brunson, how he played the game. Just like super hard, super stoic, not getting too emotional about things. But I do think it's good for the league that you have these stories coming out where the women are playing really hard basketball, and they really want to win, and they want to beat Caitlyn Clark, and she wants to beat the league and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's cool.
Dude. Well, I'm gonna stay tuned on it, because I saw that clip and I was like, wow, that's crazy. We did have we had our TH 45 challenge that just finished for Father's Day and June 15th. And we had a kind of wrap-up call this morning that I thought was really cool. And we had great feedback. And so, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, if you've been joining our newsletters, if you've been a part of like kind of like the Train Hard ecosystem on the fringe, on the outside, join in with us, jump in, continue to listen to the podcast, continue to join the newsletter, but also join us on the Train Hard app. The community feature in there is just awesome. The conversations that are happening are incredible. And we had some new merch that just dropped, some Train Early, Train Hard merch, which is just a nice slogan that I like to live by. And so if you haven't checked out the merch, if you haven't checked out the app, you can go to th.fit or check out the podcast show notes and just kind of see what else we have going on. If you like these conversations, we're just on a mission to level up as many guys as possible. And I think the community function in the app is probably the most powerful thing we have. I mean, there's a lot of other channels we have like this, but man, if you want to engage with us, make sure to check that out. So want to make sure I shared that because I thought this morning was really great.
Heck yeah.
Oh, what does Jason think about the little Oklahoma team? So, truth is, Liz, there's NBA playoffs that happen. I don't really know what happened. What's happened?
Oklahoma got trounced last night by the Pacers. Oklahoma only put up 91 points, which is kind of crazy for
Game
them.
7 now. Game 7 in
Yep.
Oklahoma.
It goes back to Oklahoma, and OKC has a chance to win it at home. I think tomorrow or the next day. I don't know. They take a day off.
You wonder how much of that is rigged so that they can go 7 games and get more sponsorship payments and stuff like that.
There's always like little underscores of that, but I was talking to Liz about this before. Like the big market team would be in, like the fact that they have these 2 small market teams playing, kind of like defeats that whole thing. Think about how much more viewership and ticket sales and everything would be in a Knicks anyone,
Lakers,
and they really had a chance to be there. Oh yeah. So.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
But I mean, maybe, but
the Lakers
Well,
just got valued at like $11 billion.
Billion. Yeah, that's wild. And it was bought for like 146 million, like, I don't know, 20 years ago.
ROI. Solid
Dude.
That's a super
ROI.
solid.
Dude.
I only had 11 billion laying around.
Well, getting your ROI, make sure to join the Train Hard app. That's where you're going to get the best return on all of your fitness needs. We got you back. We got you covered. And make sure to stay tuned for the next home team episode. Hopefully we'll have Dennis, in like a week or 2. I think he's coming back on, or
Yep.
10 days. Mm-hmm. We'll have the DM man back. And aside from that, guys, any final closing remarks, or are we good to go for today?
Let's get out.
Go.
All right, guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope your family's doing awesome. Keep training hard, and see you guys again next week.